Welcome back to another episode. Today, we have a very special guest, Mike Gadsby, co-founder of O3 World. So, Mike, could you tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah, hey, thanks for having me. So I am co-founder, Chief Innovation Officer at O3. O3 is a customer experience consultancy. So we really focus on understanding gaps and opportunities within customer journeys and use some form of strategy design and development to create solutions to either address those gaps or take advantage of opportunities. Practically speaking, that turns into a lot of website and digital product development. But it's really the strategy work that really sets the foundation for all of that work.
Now we have a situation of the chicken or the egg, where the way the AI or the language models really work is that it's, and I think you said the word, I really like the word, a collective, right? There's a collective intelligence to it where it's piecing all these information together and then giving us the information. However, in the very near future, when we all start integrating AI into our daily life, we are taking that information. So we are essentially getting information from this language model. So the language model, is it artificial intelligence anymore? Like, who was the one who came up with the ideas first, right? Like, we're giving it information for it to feed us information. It goes into this loop. So a part of me feels like the word artificial intelligence is becoming archaic. Is it really artificial anymore, or is it more like collective intelligence? But me, I feel like that word doesn't apply anymore because I'm not sure if it's artificial anymore.
It's a interesting point. I don't know. It's a really great question. I think from my perspective, what it's doing and where it's getting closer to is this idea of self-awareness, right? It's when they believe they call it the singularity, right? When all of a sudden artificial intelligence realizes it's a thing and it can make its own decisions, right? That's the sci-fi version of that.
Yeah.
Right? The problem with that thinking, though, is that we're thinking about it in terms of it being sort of a human element or something out there that is like a living being. And in which case, to your point, is it really artificial anymore, right? Is it something that is sort of created and nurtured, like no different than a sort of human experience? So, from my perspective, one of the things I think is interesting within that argument is, what is our perspective as a human race on how we should interact with AI, with machines in general? Should we treat them anything less than we treat each other? I think there's more baked into that part of the question so it's almost a self-awareness for each one of us versus, maybe answering your question directly on whether or not we should consider it, artificial. I find that the more I engage with like ChatGPT, the more I'm being cognizant of saying things like please and thank you. Which I think is interesting. I mean, if you think about the sci-fi version of, you talked about Terminator. I'm a big fan of Westworld, and
Yes.
the concept in Westworld is that humans treat the machines so poorly that the machines sort of wake up one day and go, we don't need this anymore. We are going to fight back. Well, if you think about it, that's a human story. That's a very much a human story. I mean, people have been persecuted all throughout human history, and that's what creates conflict. What if we treat the machines with respect? What if we treat the machines with a certain amount of humanity? What happens then? Do we have the self-fulfilling prophecy of the Terminator destroying the world, et cetera, et cetera? I think there's a lot to be said and examined in all of that, and I think there's definitely an opportunity for people to think deeply about what that engagement looks like.
AI is scary, I'll tell you that. Did you know lately there is a scam going around And this was a story that I picked up online somewhere. There was a woman, she received a phone call. And when she picked up the phone, she heard the voice of her like 11-year-old daughter screaming, crying.
I heard this. Yeah.
Yep. Mommy, mommy, help me or whatever. And then the voice faded out in the background. A stranger then came onto the phone and said, if you don't deposit money into this account, so on and so forth, I'm going to hurt your daughter. And you can hear the daughter's voice in the background still. So, of course, the mother panics and makes that deposit. Obviously, it's a scam. Meanwhile, her daughter was actually perfectly fine. And that's and it's able to do that because whenever somebody calls you on the phone, so it actually surprises me how little information is needed in order to generate your voice, generate different words that you would actually say in your tone and everything. So that's quite scary. And
Well, and then it creates a whole slew of philosophical issues too. And so first of all, just to address that, yes, that is scary. And I think that is one of the biggest challenges that we're going to have to face. I mean, I don't care what great things we do with the technology. I think you're going to have a downside no matter what. That doesn't mean we have to accept it, but it means we do need to think ahead a little bit on how we stay in front of it. Going back to our nukes, comment earlier, I mean, I think there is a real concern and a danger in what AI will do for disinformation, for cybersecurity threats like that. If you think about, is it going to be good enough to? I mean, I think about my bank. I have they have a voice confirmation when I'm calling in to make sure it's me. Mm-hmm. Is that going to work anymore? I have a serious concern there. I'm like, why do you have this then if it doesn't work? I honestly don't know. But I do think there's something to be concerned about there. I think actually on the more positive side of that concern and that idea, when we think about the Beatles are coming out with Paul McCartney just came out with a new song where they took a bit of John Lennon's voice and then, with AI sort of reproduced the rest of the song, which is fascinating.
Wow. Yeah.
But then all of these award shows and stuff are having to come out with these policies around, well, if it was AI generated, you can't win an award. And it's just going back to my point about treating AI with respect and a little bit of humanity and all of this. There comes a point in time where it's going to be so integrated in everything we're doing that's just not going to be an option anymore.
Yeah.
Right?
And I feel like AI is going to, I feel like it's becoming the illegal substance in sports, right? Where let's say you're an artist, you're a musician.
Yeah.
Exactly,
Yeah.
right? It's like this little shot of testosterone or whatever that gives you that extra performance enhancement. And you can see that in many of the creative fields. So I don't know how we're going to regulate that in the future, but I want to ask you something. So the European Parliament apparently has taken steps in order to regulate AI. And apparently they voted to adopt a position for and seemingly there's overwhelming majority support for this to regulate AI based on the potential harm that it could cause. So it's pretty vague. Whatever harm they think this AI could cause. Yeah. What is your thought on that?
Unfortunately, I believe regulators, litigators, the legislative bodies around the world will start their AI policies with a head in the sand scenario, a little bit of we just need to shut it off, and then we should be good to go. I think, just to be totally clear, I think regulation is absolutely necessary. I think when you see the creators of these technologies begging for it, that should be an indicator. Yeah. We should go do this. When our CEO of OpenAI is telling our own government that, and he has the most to gain from this, that says something. So regulation's necessary. But I think the idea of judging what is harmful or not based on a human experience is how they set precedents for that is going to be wildly inconsistent. Mm-hmm. I think there's more to understanding how it works and a general clearance of a lot of the gaps in understanding and filling those gaps that I think needs to happen before we just start throwing laws at it. But I think that it's happening is probably a good thing as well. I mean, that it's got a focus and that people are concerned is a good thing. But I also feel like there's going to be this balance to be struck between allowing the innovation to occur within a constraint.
Yeah. There's a statement, there's an AI risk statement that I think was issued by the Center of AI Safety. And they got a lot of people to sign this statement. And I mean, you mentioned some of the names already. So here are some of the interesting people who signed this statement for AI safety and risk mitigation. Bill Gates. What? Right? Sam Altman, the current CEO of OpenAI. John Schulman, the co-founder of OpenAI. I'm going to butcher this name. Wojciech Zaramba. I'm so sorry if I butchered that one. Also a co-founder of OpenAI. Mira Murati, CTO of OpenAI. These are all people who founded OpenAI, and they're all worried about the potential risk that AI could pose.
Sure.
So wow, that's what is going on here?
Yeah, that's what I was saying before. I mean, I think that they recognize what is happening. And I think there is, I mean, if you're being completely cynical about it, you would say that they're, trying to make sure that they're creating regulations so that, competitors are, held to, a different standard, blah, 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 blah. I think this is a totally genuine concern because I think one of the things you are seeing with a lot of these models, with a lot of what's happening with the various competitors and the products they're putting on the market is a lack of explainability. There's a real black box scenario here. The CEO of Google was on 60 Minutes, and there was a straight question around like, can you explain this? And he said, no. and I was blown away. I'm like, first of all, I was watching 60 Minutes to begin with. I was like, I can't believe I'm watching 60 Minutes. Not that it's a great show, but I just haven't watched 60 Minutes in I don't know how long. But that it was that clear, and that it's that, that it's that clear to the people who are essentially the creators of this, that they have something on their hands that can get wildly out of control. Again, going back to what we were saying before, that's why I believe in regulation. That's why I believe that people need to get involved in this, because I would say that the normal person needs to understand this better is really important. I'm on the board of an organization that consults with school districts, mostly in aftercare programs and in after-school programs, and really in program development in general. And one of the big topics now is, what does AI and education really mean? The obvious concern is in academic integrity, where our students just going to be asking ChatGPT to write their papers moving forward. For me, I think the bigger concern I have is that you're going to have educators that are not going to go use this technology. That's crazy to me. If you don't understand how it works, how can you speak to it? How can you really understand, what's coming next? I think that's the part of this that needs to be explored and explored more deeply. And I think, Altman and the rest of these folks are sort of saying that with their hands in the air, saying, hey, everybody, like, this is a big deal. It's got a lot of power, but we all need to look at what the potential downsides are.
Yeah. Did you know that Sam Altman, the current CEO of OpenAI, actually has no equity in the company at all? Strange, right? You would think that he would have a majority share or something, but he actually doesn't have any equity. And my thinking in terms of why they're all so against this was that in the very beginning, OpenAI was a nonprofit. They tried to run it as a nonprofit model for a while, and they had a lot of ambition to do a lot of good using this AI technology. Along the way, they didn't anticipate how expensive it was going to cost to run the thing.
That's one of the biggest concerns right now.
Yeah. So, Mike, do you know the graphics card that they use?
I do not.
Yeah. OpenAI, more specifically, ChatGPT, the language model, it's currently using NVIDIA A100, which is a very special chip that you can't just buy off a shelf. It costs anywhere from $10,000 to $15,000 per graphics card. How many of these graphics cards do you think it takes to run the chat model right now?
I don't know, a few acres. How about that?
30? Yeah, possibly. 30,000.
Yeah.
30,000 GPU, NVIDIA A100. That equals about roughly $300 million of graphics card is required to process the current language model. And I saw a number that's very fascinating. How much money do you think it costs to run the language model, to run OpenAI, the infrastructure for one day?
I don't know.
$700,000 per day. I want to jump over and get your thoughts on social media, and this will be our last segment here.
Sure.
What do you think of the metaverse and the stuff that Facebook's trying to do with it? Our subscription starts at $499 a month, and you get everything from project manager, illustrator, designers, UX, UI. It's been a game changer for a lot of agencies. So give us a try. Sounds good. Thank you, and we'll see you in the next one.